Welcome to Pastor's Chat today. We're in Revelations 13, right in the middle of the tribulation. Remember, we had said that chapters 10 through 14 are looking back at some of the details of the first part of the tribulation and looking forward to the last 3.5 years of the tribulation, describing some personalities like here in chapter 12 and 13 especially. We meet the Antichrist, the false prophet, and of course Satan at work behind the scenes, the unholy trinity. So here we're talking about the false prophet. We began talking about him yesterday as he shows up on the scene, and now in chapter 13 he exercises the authority of the first beast in his presence. So two beasts, the beast out of the sea in verse 1, here in verse 11, the beast out of the earth, the beast out of the sea, the Antichrist, the beast out of the earth, the false prophet, as he's called in other chapters. And he has the authority of the Antichrist, this false prophet does. And he causes the earth, here's the purpose that the false prophet has. He causes all on the earth that dwell on the earth to worship the first beast, and it gets specific, whose deadly wound was healed. Again, that's a reference to the first part of the chapter where this first beast had a deadly wound and it was healed. Then in verse 13, he performs great signs so that he might even make fire come down out of heaven on the earth in the sight of men. Remember, when Jesus was on the earth, the Pharisees came and asked him, give us a sign to prove that you're the Son of God, that you are the Messiah, you're the Christ. And Jesus basically said, no, I'm not giving you a sign. I've already given you one. That's the sign of the prophet Jonah. But this false prophet will do some signs, even to the extent of calling fire out of heaven. Now his greatest sign will be the abomination of desolation that's mentioned in Daniel chapter 9 verse 27 and chapter 11 verse 36. And Jesus mentioned this same thing, the abomination of desolation, in the middle of the tribulation, because Jesus had said, and after this there will be great tribulation, which marks the end, the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. And Paul also talked about it in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 4. So what is this abomination of desolation? Well, it is the image of the beast. Notice what he does. It says he deceives the earth with these signs, and it was granted. And so what he does, he tells those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword and killed. So the two false prophets, the false prophet and the Antichrist has just killed the two witnesses. They've been taken up to heaven. And now here this false prophet shows up. He makes an image of the beast. And so he sets up just an idol, just a dead idol in the middle of the temple to desecrate it, because they begin persecuting the Jews who have fled to the wilderness, as we saw back in a previous chapter. And now he sets up this image. Now what is interesting, remember, the two witnesses were killed. They laid on the streets for 3 days of Jerusalem, and then they resurrected. Now, this false prophet, guess what he's going to do? He's going to cause the image to speak, to come alive. It's like he's given life to it. Doesn't that remind you of when Moses confronted Pharaoh there next to the Nile River, and he threw down his rod and it became a snake? And remember what the physicians or the magicians of Egypt did? They threw down their rods, and guess what they did? They became snakes too. But then, of course, Moses' rod, his snake, swallowed up their snakes. God is always greater and powerful. But what we find out is Satan can do miracles. And just because somebody does a miracle and makes something happen miraculously does not mean they are of God. So there are many false prophets already in the world. Now this is the ultimate false prophet, and he is causing this image to speak, to come alive. Kind of duplicating a miracle that God had just made and performed when these two witnesses resurrected, stood up, and then they ascended into heaven. And so this false prophet is energized by Satan, and he'll be performing lying wonders and duplicate even some of the other signs that were performed by the two witnesses. And we'll look more at that in the next few days. Well, God bless you, and you have a wonderful, wonderful day.